Hello, Michael.
Hey, Graham, how are you?
Good.
Good. Hey, Nate. 2 nights in a row.
How many committees are you both on?
Nate came to visit the planning board meeting yesterday.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And, how you doing, Graham?
I'm good. Are you on the planning board as well, Michael?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. There's so many committees and boards and things.
There are indeed. So I'm excited for our first meeting. It's not often you have a first meeting of a committee.
Not
No.
very often. No.
Yeah. So I guess you were part of the first meeting of the MLP board.
I was indeed. And the well, and I guess I couldn't say the broadband committee because you had been in a previous incarnation of the broadband committee, hadn't you, Michael?
Yeah, I was one of the founding members of the way back one.
Yeah. Well, that's my my thing is that timing is everything. To be 5 years too soon is a lot. There's a lot of meetings.
I would agree.
Hmm.
Hi, Zoe. Hi, Leslie.
Hey, Michael. Hey, Graham. Hey,
Hello,
Zoe.
everyone.
Hey, Gail.
Hey, Leslie.
I think
Gail,
we're just waiting
Zoe.
for Miriam. And
Oh,
then we'll
Gail and Nate.
be complete.
Wow.
I was just saying, I'm glad we're all getting to do this. It went smoothly. Thank you all for the date picking. It went, that's always the ugliest part.
Well, thank you, Michael, for taking the initiative and sending all the documents. I felt like I was back in grad school reading and trying to get ready for the
It'll be on the test, Leslie. Watch out. I wasn't super enthusiastic about getting yet another email address, but it's working out okay.
Yeah. Well, it does seem like a pain, but keeping them separate, I mean, besides like just the preferred way of doing it, it's, once they start coming, it's nice to sort of have them go somewhere else.
But for the MLP, I just always have a folder that I throw everything that's MLP or broadband in the folder. And when I write something, I make a copy. I copy it into the folder too. But yeah, it's lots of ways to do things. So
yeah, Yeah, I think for this committee, it shouldn't be a big deal, but like, I know on, on places where there's public record requests, that's when it's a pain because you have to sort of go through personal emails to figure out, okay, what's town, what's not town. So that's why the web committee came up with that. So, well, why don't we give Miriam a minute or two more and then we can officially start. Yes, Gail. You're muted.
We can't lip read. Gal, you're muted.
Thank you. Basics 101. I chimed in late, sorry, but are you saying that all our correspondence is going to go through the ECAC Shutesbury.org address?
It will. And so that's one of the things we can talk about, but yeah, I'll just mention it now just because Miriam's got it set up. So at this point, everyone's, oh, here she is. Cool. We're now complete.
Hey, Miriam.
Hello,
Hi there. How are you?
good.
Cool. So we can do a big hooray. We're complete. We can.
Hooray!
Yay! So I was going to start out with, I guess, one big question. Are you all okay with me just sort of coordinating the meeting until we organize and we pick a chair?
Yeah.
Just, okay. I didn't want to make assumptions. So, and I think Miriam, you're the only chair from another committee here. So all we have to do is.
No, I'm the MLP chair.
Oh, you are? Wow. Well, so I don't pay attention enough on the planning board. So what's the current COVID announcement? We just have to open the meeting, but do we have to?
You don't
just
need
say-
to make that announcement.
So we just say that the meeting's being recorded and that's that.
You don't even need to say that.
Okay. So I'll call the meeting to order then. And,
But we need to make sure who's going to take minutes before we go
That
any
would-
further.
That was my next question. So.
It's not going to be me.
Yeah. So for this meeting, we can figure out later when we reorganize, but would someone be willing to volunteer just for this meeting? And then we'll figure it out in 15, 20 minutes.
What does
And,
that involve?
Good question, Zoe. Everyone has a different style. I would say for this meeting or for this committee, it's less of a big deal. Like for planning board and Concom, there's more legal stuff that has to be really for minutes. It's capturing what the state says. It has to be written so that a reasonable person would know what was discussed, which doesn't mean capturing, Zoe said this and Gail said that and Nate said that, but more like the committee discussed this topic or reviewed these things. And then if we make a decision and we vote, then we just have to document the vote. Yes, Gail.
Points of interest or center of the discussion are interesting because that's going to build a historical record of how things developed in the course of the committee.
Yeah. Well, I think within reason, we actually talked about this at planning board yesterday, where we have a new person who's taking minutes. And she's saying like, Gail said this, and then Zoe said this, and then Leslie said this, and that, so it's sort of taking the concepts.
Doesn't need to be a verbatim transcript
Right.
unless you're taking notes for the Conservation Commission, in which case.
They better be.
So if you'd be willing to at least try for tonight and
Sure.
Cool, that'd be really cool. Thank you. That's the
Yeah.
hardest part of this whole meeting.
Yeah, so we just say the subjects that are discussed, you don't need to get the details. The more you
Okay.
write, the less likely it is to get read.
Yeah.
I can give you a template, a word template that you can use with how it's supposed to be structured. So if you just
Okay.
take notes for tonight, and then I can send you a Word doc that'll help you.
Okay, that would be great.
Cool. So I guess the first question is just, is everyone good with the agenda that I put together? And we can go through that. Okay. You want me to screen share it? Or does everyone feel like they got enough of a grasp that we can sort of just go through it?
Just
Cool.
go through it.
Okay. So I was thinking, since we're all brand new, maybe we take the first 15 minutes, just each of us take a few minutes to sort of say who we are and how we got here and why we're here and whatever else seems relevant, sort of just for sharing and team building. So, and maybe someone will go and then hand it off to somebody else. So who wants to go first? Okay, Miriam, oh, Nate, go. Great.
Yeah, sure, I'll go. Well, hello, everyone. It's great to be here this evening. I'm Nate Hurd. I live at 64 Cushman Road in Shutesbury. Although Amherst does deliver my mail, I am in Shutesbury officially. And so we're just down by Atkins Reservoir, really right around the corner from Zoe. So, you know, I've lived in DC for the past 16 years, and we just moved up here in August, and actually moved in November. So we've really only been in this house for a couple of months. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So just my background, I'm in public health, and my work is in health geography. So, you know, I'm interested in the energy transition from an environmental and ecology perspective, but also from a public health perspective as well. You know, one of our priorities in our new home is to try to electrify as much as we can. So from transportation or taking advantage of some of the state incentives for weatherizing our home. You know, we're looking at the possibility of installing a geothermal heat pump here so we can get off of home heating oil. When we were in DC, I really thought hard actually about moving to a colder climate and how hard that would be to live in a net zero or close to net zero way. So I actually did a lot of homework on what it would take just to be back in New England, because I'm from Massachusetts. I grew up in Millbury and Worcester, and kind of been back and forth between Massachusetts and DC for most of my life. So it's great to be back, and I'm convinced that it's possible. And I'm really excited to just be part of this community and kind of talking about how at a community level, we can move together in this transition to you know, a cleaner energy and just manage this transition as best we can. So yeah, thanks for having me. Good to be here. And I'll hand it over to Miriam. I just beat you out in introductions.
I don't know that I was volunteering, but I'll go. I'm Miriam. I think I know everybody mostly in different paths. I think Zoe, you may have actually gone to school with one of my kids, I think, maybe my daughter, Sarah Berlin. Does that ring a bell?
Yes.
Yes, I think you guys were like in the same generation, so to speak. Yeah. So I'm Miriam. I've lived in Shutesbury since 1988, and not as long as Leslie, but I've known Leslie even longer than that, going way, way, way back to, you know, my first marriage. Live on Pratt Corner Road. I am professionally a psychologist, but I've been retired for the last 5 years, actually due to a disability. So I've had some excess time to devote to thinking about environmental issues, and you know, I've been really excited and enthused about being on the Conservation Commission. I'm also on the Historical Commission. And sometimes there's a really interesting kind of synergy between those two. And I was thinking about how there's kind of this commonality among a bunch of us on this group, because Graham and I are in the process of getting getting heat pumps installed in our homes, and you're getting a geothermal system, and Gail already has a geothermal system. I don't know about the rest of you, but so that I'm kind of like thinking about that stuff. A few years ago, my husband Rob, and I put in a solar system on our roof. So it's been also exciting to kind of be electrifying and reducing our footprint. But I've been thinking a lot about our community's resilience in the face of climate change, and also about the issue of solar access and renewable, kind of social justice for and renewables, because there's been this dynamic in our community around people who are the haves and the have-nots, the people who can afford to solarize and get expensive heat pump systems, and people who cannot, and yet are kind of subsidizing our access because it's on our solar benefits. For example, I get credits through the utility company that goes on the backs of ratepayers who are paying increased rates in order to subsidize my solar system. So I've had some thoughts at times about wondering about how we could think creatively about renewable energy on a community-wide basis, as well as how do we become more resilient in the face of climate change and severe storms and runoff and roads and all the other issues. So glad to be here.
We handed it to.
I don't know, Graham.
Okay, and Miriam, thank you for handing, and thank you also, Miriam, because Miriam pointed out that Mass Save, who I knew had changed their $2,000 for heat pumps, $2,000 grant to $10,000 whole house heat pump grant. Talk to Miriam, Nate, when you when you're looking at that. But my contractor, despite the fact that they were a Mass Save approved contractor, they were totally like flat-footed and wrong, totally wrong, Miriam, about I called Mass Save and they said, yeah, you absolutely have to have a Mass Save has to kick the ball off.
I know.
No.
I've been going through the rabbit hole. It's crazy. Not an easy system to
Right,
navigate.
yeah, but still, I was disappointed that my contractor, my approved contractor, who had originally said they were going to handle the whole Mass Save grant thing themselves, but then it changed, and so but then they just totally dropped it. So anyhow, there you go. You start off, talk to one of us if and when we get our $10,000, because we'll know how to do it by then. But yeah, I'm getting a whole house. We here are getting a whole house thing. So my big moment of inspiration, I guess, came when I watched the UMass Extension person. I've forgotten her name now, but anyhow, she gave a presentation for the town online, a Zoom thing, about 9 months ago or whatever, and I discovered that that communities are now its potential to generate enough electricity. For towns like West Hampton was the one they'd studied, but that was similar to Shutesbury, that we would need to generate about 35 megawatts, 30 megawatts of electricity. We already generate, the unfortunate Wheelock history, but they're generating 5 megawatts there. So we're already, even though that it might have been done poorly, it's got potential, and it turns out to be about 1.5% of Shutesbury. Obviously, it would be contentious which 1.5% area, but we already use 13% of Shutesbury for whatever we want. 1% of it is road right of way, and a couple of percent are my lawn hardly counts as a lawn, but I mean, we're already using 13%. I think if we can't find another 1% somewhere in town that everybody agrees could be used. So anyhow, that was what my realization, that I couldn't generate. I generate more electricity on my roof than I use because our kids have moved out of home. So our kilowatt hours for the year are probably 40% more. We have a credit, but as soon as we get heat pumps, we'll be paying for electricity again. And when we get electric cars, then there's nowhere to put those photovoltaics. So I had to mess around with about an acre of woods to get all the. I climbed trees, so I chopped 60 trees. I climbed up them. Some of them I've climbed up a few times. I chopped them down. I had to chop down the big ones, the biggest ones, but the ones that were just sticking into my soul again, I took them down. About 10 years worth of growth. Most of them didn't die. One or two died. The woodpeckers love them. So anyhow, that was what I realized at that point. I got into the energy committee, and then the energy committee dissolved. So now I'm here.
We handed it to Graham.
So what?
Who do you want to hand it to?
Oh, good point. I would hand it to Zoe.
Awesome. I'm so impressed at you clearing all those trees. I like picturing you up there climbing those trees. That's epic. So I am a new farmer near Atkins Reservoir. I grew up on Henry Street, close by. And my mom kept her horses here when I was growing up. So I've known this property in this area my whole life. Hi, Mom. My mom in the room. So I began farming 5 years ago, and I would say that my life passion has become finding ways to be more resilient. And that has looked like a lot of skill building around producing our own food, preserving that food, and then also all of the work that needs to go into making sure that the whole farm ecosystem is healthy and able to be not just sustained, but rejuvenated through our farming of it. And so I guess the longer I do this, the more I realize how interconnected this farm is. There's the farm system contained within the areas that I walk and work on every day, but then there's also just the surrounding forest, and I've been thinking a lot about water recently, and so all of the different factors that impact the farm ecosystem took me here. And I'm really happy to be here to learn more about the ways that water flows and is at risk, and also just the community connection piece. It was just really fun for me to read through the MVP, just to learn more about where I live. It was very grounding. So I'm really happy to be here and to offer a perspective from a farmer, someone who's promoting resilience through food independence and working a lot with soil health specifically. So I will pass it along to Gail.
Hi, I'm not officially yet a member of the committee, but my appointment, the alleged appointment, is on the April 12th select board agenda. I'm a newbie in town, moved here and bought land in 2004, built a house in 2007. Geothermal was part of the original plan, and with a roof slope that I hoped would be amenable to solar eventually. So yes, the geothermal is going to add to your electric bill, but you don't have an oil bill, gas bill, et cetera, et cetera. So Nate, if you want to talk about geothermal, I'm a big proponent. I love it. Had very good experience with it. Happy to pass that along. Put solar panels on my roof in 2012. And I'm a spreadsheet freak, so I've kept careful track of production and compared it to my electric bill and blah, 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 blah. A thing that they don't say often that's very interesting, or was available in 2012, and this would be something to explore. SRECs, which are credits for production, is an immediate income. There's also an offset of your electric bill if you get net metering. So you get a lowered electrical cost and a monetary income if you have SRECs. So there's a dual financial advantage to having solar on your home, in addition to all the philosophic and environmental good reasons for having it. My own interest in particular in this is to look at how the town energy can be better made more efficient, which is to say, look at electrical use and electrical production. Both the solar installations at town hall and the fire department are net metered on those two buildings. So it's already factored into the cost of electricity on those two installations. But if we were to install some other kind of solar installation, it would be intriguing to look at the possibility of SRECs credits that could be an immediate income to the town. But to Miriam's point, there's an issue between town energy use and production and individual homeowner, resident, or renters use and production, and how to get at the ability or inability or the obstacles that preclude homeowners being able to take advantage of some of these programs. These programs are great, but they take an immense outlay at the onset. And how to get hold of that and how to make that possible is a real question, I think, and a real obstacle. One other thing that I would bring to the committee is basically a coordinator with other committees. I'm on the open space committee and had been part of the rewriting of the open space plan, which has in it action items on the multiple vulnerability, et cetera, and projects and items that are planning board, conservation commission, historical commission, and also they were cited as part of the agenda or the charge of this committee. So this might be some way of coordinating among those various committees with those particular projects or items, action items in focus. And I'd be willing to take that on if that were of use to the committee. I'm also a big record keeper. Happy to go chase documentation. I'll hand it off to Leslie.
Thank you, Gail, and thank you, everyone. I moved to Shutesbury. Well, I bought my land in 1985 and also contracted my passive solar home. I do not have solar on my house, but with the natural materials back then that I had to send away from, I realized I'm still pretty avant-garde in terms of natural home building. I've talked to Don Wakaluk many times about the big oak tree in front of the house and the shade trees on the east and west. And he's like, they're not ready to come down yet. So I cannot have solar on my house. So I have bought into co-op power. So I'm getting my electricity from a community solar source. And I guess I've made a career of being an organic farm to table chef, organic lifestyle expert, and also building a natural home. So I'm really excited about offering my skills in terms of any buildings that are being renovated or built, making sure that they are natural materials so that people with allergies can come and go.
Wow.
When I built my house and moved in '87, it did not smell like a new car. It smelled great. Natural paints, natural stains, local wooden floors, plaster walls, etc. So I'm super excited about that part. I'm also excited about having the town go natural in terms of cleaning materials and banning pesticides. And there's so many things that I think we have in common, but I'm looking at more like lifestyle choices and how those simple things everybody in town can do. For instance, I had an incident a while ago where I had the police chief come because I found this suspicious bucket in the woods, and my friend who was visiting was Israeli and he was all triggered that there could be explosives in there. So we called the cops and they came right over and they opened it up, and they were just so super helpful, but they smelled like Tide, and I was like, yuck, So I am looking for those kinds of things and looking to share my expertise on organic and natural living and building and
Leslie, what was the
growing food.
bucket for? What, did you ever figure it out?
Yes, it turned out that bucket was in the woods for a really long time, and finally I wanted to get it out. And they said there was bear bait in there, which was illegal. There were actually 2 buckets that I found one earlier, and I just took all this stinky stuff and put it in garbage bags. I thought it was like somebody threw poopy diapers in my woods, but it was illegal bear bait that our chief identified and willingly took the buckets, and they were super wonderful to work with. I have not told them how offended I was by the smell of their outfits. But I've got a personal thing about people smelling like Tide and all these crazy products that are legal. Yeah, so that's what was in my woods for years. I finally decided to go, what is this stuff? So that's me. I guess I'm a pioneer and revolutionary in terms of natural home building. I actually have a masonry heater so that I heat with wood. I don't use solar. When I wrote my first cookbook, I did some research on organics, and I learned that the best thing to do is to use less of everything. So I'm really happy to help people use less so that we don't need more clear cutting of the forest to supply our electrical needs. I'll pass
Leslie,
it up. Yeah.
you co-op power. Did you have to put up capital for that? Do you know where it's located?
I've asked a few times where it's located. I had to put up, I think, $250 to join. And that was, I don't know how many years ago. I don't even know if I've paid the whole thing yet or anything like that. Supposedly I get 15% off my electric bill for joining, which was happening initially. I've got some billing issues that I'm trying to work out with all the new accountants that have come in. But it's a wonderful idea for those of us who don't want to take out trees for solar.
So you get an electric bill from
Graham,
co-op
I'm gonna-
powered, do you?
hey, Graham, can we hold on that one? Just
Okay,
so
yeah.
I'll jump in, and then I just want to move us
Thank you,
along.
Michael.
You're welcome. So I'll do me quick. I don't know Nate or Zoe hardly at all, but I know everybody else. The things I think to know is in the 80s and early 90s, I worked for Greenpeace. So it's my favorite job ever, going around the country and protesting. But that was In 1992, I was in New York at one of the first UN climate conferences, protesting there. So it's been a long road of climate awareness. And sort of jumping fast forward, when I was on the select board, which I think was 2015 to 18, the energy committee at that point was not meeting and not doing anything. And I sort of asked the question, shouldn't they be looking at some of these issues? And there was no there. And so after I left the select board, I found out about the MVP grants and asked the select board if I could write the grant, the planning grant to get into the program, which I did, and started on that path. And I think, to Gail's point, one of the things that's in the charge is coordinating with the other committees. And so with my interest, I talked to Rita, who's the chair of the select board now, and asked her if she could sort of create a committee like this, to sort of like look at all the different related issues and coordination. And I was thrilled when the select board got around to doing it, because God knows it's needed. So I've been waiting for the opportunity to sort of open up, and there's a lot to do. So that's sort of me in a nutshell. So, well, I would say we went longer than I had planned, but we didn't have public comment. And I think it's really important that we sort of like get to know who each other is. So it's definitely worthwhile. So shifting gears to sort of one of the business things is what committees have to do is organize. So what that definitely means is picking a chair. Sometimes there's a vice chair. And then we can sort of have the discussion about how we want to have minutes, and then when we want to meet. Those are sort of like the 4 points, I would say. So I think the first thing is, if we figure out who's going to be chair, then that person can run the meeting from here on in. So normally it's
I
people
nominate Michael.
I second that.
We have a second. All right, I'll do roll
Okay.
call.
Okay.
Discussion.
I like having other chairs in the room.
By acclamation.
Unless
Nate,
somebody
you,
else
did- Nate,
wants
you
it.
didn't say anything. Did you want to be chair, Nate?
No, I'm not vying for chair. I am curious though, with the open meeting requirements, do we need to go around and individually say, I'm Nate Hurd and I vote aye?
Yeah, I think Miriam was going to go through that. And
Okay.
Miriam,
The
you wanna
roll
do
call.
it?
I will just this one time.
We
do
need a
roll call.
motion. We need a motion.
I
Okay.
move that we appoint Michael as our chair of the ECAC.
Graham
I
seconded.
second it again.
Okay,
Cool.
DeCara,
Aye, and thank you.
DeFont, I, Sefton,
Sefton and I.
Hurd. Oh, you're muted.
You're muted.
Carrier,
Aye.
Weisenbaum,
Aye.
Fleischiger.
Aye.
So moved.
Cool. Cool. Gail,
Point of
Yeah.
information, Zoe, would you please tell us how you pronounce your first name properly?
Zoe,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
cool. Well, thank you all. I am thrilled to do it. And happy to do it. And it's, when I was thinking about this committee, what was really cool is it's not legalistic like the Concom of the planning board. It's sort of research and visioning and getting stuff done. It's a whole different vibe.
Right.
So it's a nice way to interact. So I guess one question would be, do we want to have a vice chair or not bother at this point? Anyone have any strong opinions?
What's the
Okay.
point?
Okay, we'll move on from that one. So
I think the chair should take minutes though.
no, that's too hard. No, that was the next question. I mean, we can do shifting, and take turns when each
We could
meeting.
take turns. Yeah.
And so everyone gets to, oh, and Zoe, I was going to say, for that whole introduction, that could be summarized as the committee introduced itself. Like, that would be sufficient.
Okay. We're not getting into the heat pumps and geothermal.
No, no.
No one needs to know.
Yeah.
No one needs to know.
One sentence per subject.
Yeah. So do people like the rotating idea for minute taking?
Sure. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So maybe at the end of the meeting, we'll figure out who does it next. So someone can get motivated in the interim.
Zoe
And-
started, it could be reverse alphabetical on first names.
I like it.
Cool. And then the last thing is just when we want to meet. And so when I did the poll, it seemed like Tuesdays was the best day. 4 people said that was the best day. And then the others had 2 people and 1. But now that we're all in person and live, we can sort of talk about that. And if we decide Tuesday's best, then I'm thinking we should probably meet on a monthly basis. There's no real pressing reason to meet more often. So if we settle on Tuesdays, we can figure out, do we want to do the first, second, third, fourth kind of thing. But does Tuesdays work for everybody?
Yeah.
Yeah, the only thing is that sometimes there's select board meetings.
Yeah.
on Tuesdays.
Well, I was looking at the select board, and so the challenge with select board, it's every other Tuesday, but it's not like the second and the fourth or the first or the third. It's just, so if there's 5 Tuesdays, it gets wacky. So I do think that we'll want to be off cycle as much as we can with the select board, just because if we want to report to them, and Rita was actually going to come tonight, but she got a migraine, so she sends her regrets. But since she sort of helped create this committee, I had asked her if she wanted to sort of come and talk to us. So I looked at dates, and this is to sort of just to throw out the Tuesday scenarios. So if we met on the 3rd Tuesday, that would end up being April 19th, which I know I can't do. So, but that's just that meeting, but that's school vacation week. Not that I think and it's a big deal for anybody. The 4th Tuesday would be the 26th of April. And then if we did the 1st Tuesday, we could just roll it into May 3rd. So I don't know if looking at calendars, if at least for the next meeting, if anyone has a strong feeling about. And I didn't do the 2nd Tuesday. I'm not quite sure why. I think that, because it was a known conflict with the select board, but it doesn't really matter. So any strong scheduling needs or opinions?
So I'm a little confused. So you're talking about the 26th of April?
Yeah, because let me just pull over my calendar so I can see. So yeah, so today's the 29th. So if we did the 4th Tuesday of a month, that would be the 26th of April. If we did the 3rd Tuesday, we could just meet in 3 weeks, which would be the 19th. If we did the 1st Tuesday, it's either next week or 5 weeks from now. I think next week is a little bit early. So that's what I was thinking. It's either May 3rd if we did the 1st. I'd sort of prefer to skip the 3rd just because the next meeting I'll miss, which is a drag. And then the 4th is the 26th. So personally, I was thinking we did the 1st. It's easy enough to remember. It's like, oh, but we could do the 4th as well. Miriam, you have some Concom historic meetings, and Graham, do you have things like, are they certain weeks? You were saying there's 2 Thursdays you meet, right? Concom?
Concom, 2nd and 4th
So that's
of the month. So as long as it's not Thursday.
okay. And Graham, do you have a preference in terms of?
Broadband takes Wednesdays when and sometimes it moves around, but it's usually the third Wednesday. So Tuesday works great because it doesn't conflict.
Okay.
Historical Commission is the 4th Wednesday of the month.
Okay, so if you had a back-to-back, if we did the 4th Tuesday, you'd have Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Does that work for you?
Whatever. Sorry.
Okay. So if we met on the 4th Tuesday of the month, that would be meeting April 26th. So does that work for everybody? It's basically a month from now. Okay. So we'll call it the 4th Tuesday. And we'll just plan on that unless there's some weird thing happening, but cool.
I'm just checking a paper calendar. Hang on.
Okay,
I know that's my brother's birthday, but
he's invited.
Yeah, bring him along.
I see I have an appointment in East Hampton at 4:45.
Oh, you'll be
So-
back in time.
I guess.
Yeah, okay. And that's on the 26th?
Yeah. 4:45, 5:45. By the time I guess
Seven.
it could be, I could be late.
Okay. Right.
But if
You can stop-
everybody meet on the 26th, I'll just get here when I get here.
Okay. Or you can stop at Nate or Zoe's house on the way up the hill and just meet them there. Cool. Well, why don't we assume the fourth Tuesday, and if like in the next day or two, someone has a major issue, we can change it, but we'll know we're doing Tuesdays. That
Okay.
sounds like a good thing. So if we move to the sort of the meat of it all, what I was gonna do, if I can share my screen, I redid the charge in a different kind of way. Can you guys see this?
Yeah, yep,
Yeah.
you're
So,
good.
so I took the charge and I just sort of laid it out a little bit differently. So it's sort of like what we do and with whom, and it's primarily the select board and then, with other committees and then the areas of focus. And I thought, we could look at that and then talk about priorities because there's so much we could do. And then review documents and have a conversation. So does that make sense? So I'll just read through it just because it's worthwhile. But so the select board appointed us, and the idea is that we report back and make recommendations to the select board. So the convenient part about that is that we're not, unless they say go forth and do something, it's really about setting recommendations and sharing information with them. So the main things with them is researching and recommending policies, approaches, and projects in these big areas of energy efficiency, conservation, and energy generation. So this bucket of energy stuff. And just in that, there's a lot that can be done, so policies and approaches and projects are all, that's different universes. Reviewing the MVP and the hazard mitigation plans, both of which were created recently. So, and we can talk about the action grant later, which Nate had pointed out, and then recommend climate mitigation goals and benchmarks. So all those things are big lifts. I mean, I think the priority conversation is really sort of the important part of this. And then, as Gail mentioned, it's coordinating with other committees. And I'll say, when I talked to Rita about how to think about this committee, there's only 7 of us. We can't do this all. And so really a lot of it is how to engage the other committees. So because all these committees have charges. So planning board has charge, and Concom has charge, and open space has a charge. And even the FinCom, everyone's got a piece of the solution, but everyone's working in silos. And they may or may not be thinking about this stuff. So part of it is us figuring out how to engage the other committees on the issues, so that we're, because we can't do the work, practically speaking, the 7 of us. And so that's part of the discussion, is how do we actually coordinate and sort of bring an agenda or a question or something to them to figure out. So, because this is my little editorial comment, but when I was on the select board, what I noticed is that this is a huge issue and no one was really addressing it in an organized way, yet we're a town and we're sort of connected through the, but the committees weren't working together. So I think we're sort of the instigator and the glue. Oh, hi, Gail.
That might, though, lead into our being a convener on a particular topic. And
Yeah,
bringing together those folks who've signed up for that particular action and have it clearly focused, so it's not just people running loose leash.
yeah. Hold that thought for a minute, because I think I just want to finish this, but then I think we should just open it up, because it's exactly that kind of stuff that we have to figure out. So I think in our intros, we all sort of talked about different parts of this, but the way it was defined in the charge was looking at climate resilience as in regards to, so energy is the efficiency, conservation, and generation. There's looking at the built environment, that's a typo. Transportation, land use, water, solid waste, infrastructure, open space, agriculture, and forestry.
Wow.
So it's basically everything. So, we'll be busy for as long as we want to be busy. And so my sense is what we should talk about, now, but then it's been an ongoing conversation is, given that it's everything, how do we prioritize? How do we sort of maximize? And the last part is we just report back to the select board on a quarterly basis, just to let them know what we're doing, and giving recommendations as appropriate. But so does that all make sense? Yeah, you can all see that whole thing. So why don't we talk? Miriam, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, thought about this a little bit, and I'm just going to throw out sort of my thinking about where I would put the priorities for our committee, because I think that this is a really broad charge. We could spend a lot of time on any one of these.
Yep.
And what I would like to see us be able to deliver to the select board are really concrete action steps and proposals. I think that, we're already all on the same page. I think the select board and many other town boards care about a lot of these issues. So really the question is, how do we move from we care about it to we're coming up with actual solutions and then implementing those solutions rather than just putting them on action plans that then just get carried along. So that's one of my thoughts. But in terms of two priority areas that I would really like to see us move in, one is around energy and energy access. And I know Michael and I played around with this idea over the years of the idea of a community solar project, for example.
Mhm.
Or a town-owned, municipally operated solar project that would benefit the entire town and residents, not just powering town buildings, but actually perhaps providing affordable electricity to people who can't afford solar panels on their roof or don't have the solar access because of trees or whatever it is. So that was one issue, and that's a big project, but I would love to see us be sort of trailblazers in that department. The other is, there's so many areas around climate resilience we could focus on, but I think one of the most pressing issues that I'm really been talking with the Conservation Commission a lot about, and that was one of the reasons why I was excited about getting on this committee, because I was hoping that maybe it would become a town-wide project, is really looking at stormwater management. There have been numerous proposals over the years to have a comprehensive engineering study to look at how to address stormwater management, particularly on our dirt roads, because it's a huge problem. It's expensive. It is beyond the capability of our highway department to manage effectively without outside resources. There's huge problems around stormwater around the lake. I can show you guys some videos if you'd like of something that was sent to the Conservation Commission last year of a problem where a whole property basically had like a deluge of like a foot or more of water flowing across a property. It's just unbelievable. It looked like something that should have been in the news. But anyway, so that's another area where I feel like there needs to be some sort of concerted leadership around looking at what funding is available, writing the grants that need to be written in order to get engineering studies, and then getting grant money or whatever other source of funding to actually build out more resilient roads and stormwater resources. So.
Cool, thanks. Nate? And then Gail.
Yeah, I really liked Miriam's thoughts on this list. There is an awful lot here, and I do agree that it's important to focus things down. And in addition to that, Miriam suggested something that's proactive in the form of seeking to improve, to clean the grid in effect, as well as sort of this reactive category. The hazard mitigation work is essentially responding to climate change, and I think it's important to also be looking very much in a concrete way to how do we manage the transition to cleaner electricity and decreasing the amount of carbon that we're emitting as a community. A community solar project is really interesting, and I had a question for the committee in whether or not Shutesbury had ever looked into municipal aggregation of electricity. It's an approach to electrical provision that, in the same way that, I might get, National Grid to provide the electricity, but I'm actually interacting with, say, a contract to a Texas wind farm, right? So, and that way I can say I've gotten 100% green electricity at my house. There are ways of doing that at a community scale through municipal aggregation in Massachusetts. But that was, one program that I ran across that interested me, and I wondered if Shutesbury had ever looked at that before.
Yeah. I'll jump in about that, and then Gail, if you want to go. I don't think Shutesbury has explored it. I actually attended a webinar last week or somewhere in the last couple of weeks by there's some nonprofit, whose name I'm forgetting, who does this stuff. I think it's a bigger conversation. It's a little bit funky in the sense that even the Massachusetts nonprofit contracts out it's mostly solar projects around in the state, but outside of the state. And I think it's sort of, there's a due diligence component. As we've discovered in town, there's a lot of destructive solar as opposed to, well-sited solar. And so what we would be buying into, we'd want to do research, but the short answer is we haven't looked into it, but there is this nonprofit, and I can send you the name of it. I just have to find my email invitation. And there's a webinar posted, so that they were not very clear in their presentation because I came out relatively confused, but I can share the slides. So Gail, and then Leslie.
Picking up on Miriam's point, any of these projects that we are going to undertake are going to require funding of some kind. And I'm suggesting that maybe one way is to look at it from the back end, and that is to see what kind of funding opportunities are out there and focus since this list covers everything, pick some that are feasible for established funding. Green Communities is one, and they could come and talk to us about what kinds of grants they offer, but I'm sure there are others as well. Well, I'm not sure. I would hope there are other funding agencies as well that would define projects eligible for their funding that we could match up with our focus and interests from this committee.
Cool. And Gail, do you want to say more about the convening idea, since I sort of told you to postpone that, or did you say enough before?
Well, sitting on the open space committee, I see the action plan, and I can see for any of these particular actions which committees in town are called responsible for that action. So it would not be too difficult to make up a list, well, much like you have there, Michael, of given these actions, who's involved, who would be responsible, and convene those groups around that particular, representatives from those committees around those particular action items.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So Leslie, then Graham.
This might also answer Graham's question. I know that Marianne O'Connor, who now lives at the Ceres community, who was the interim manager of Co-op Power, was looking to propose a community solar in Shutesbury. There was going to be a program at the end of this month, which I think obviously didn't happen, but I know she's got big plans to educate our community about how we can do that instead of all these deforestation solar plans. I share Miriam's concerns, but Also, I forgot to mention that I am also a gardener, and I have 14 no-till organic gardens as well. And I would also like to see, looking at open space or land use to create some community gardens that are no-till. And that would be an incredible, beautiful recycling of all the cardboard we throw out every other Tuesday, because that helps instead of rototilling. We could do no-till, and a lot of the open spaces, instead of using gasoline to mow the lawns, we could be growing food for people who don't have access to gardens. Or it's a bigger plan, but I also want to just say that the community solar is something that I know Marianne O'Connor would love to talk to us about. They did community solar project on the East Hampton River Valley Co-op,
Right.
and now they're offering to low income people, electricity through that. It's a whole program, or a reduction or something like that, because we have lots of municipal roofs, including our new elementary school, that could have solar on it, and we could have more solar for our town without taking down the forests. And Marianne O'Connor is part of that effort.
Cool. I love that you said it's a new elementary school. It shows how long you've been in town.
And a new roof. It's a lot different than when my kids went, I think.
Yeah. So Graham,
New roof, thank you.
Graham, you're on.
Yeah, just in the municipal aggregation thing, probably for National Grid used to allow, or used to run the program, allow green up, which you could get electricity that was produced by renewable processes. So I think I recall that 10%, that Shutesbury ranked very high in the score, and I think it was like 9% or 10% or something like that of the town did green up. So we were unusual in being a little more enthusiastic, even though 10% is not a real high number. But anyhow, we as a committee, we could point out that those who can't do solar on their own roofs, if they greened up their own electricity, that would pay for that would pay for the programs that would put that somewhere else. So it's something that maybe some people haven't thought about very hard, but we as a committee could take a position that everyone who can afford to pay more for their electricity and do it through the green up supplies, then yeah, that would be something that improved, maybe not right here, but it would provide funding that does install more renewables. So
Cool. Well, I'll chime in with just some thoughts that I have. Everyone's said them, but the municipally owned solar that Miriam mentioned, I think it's something that's been floating around for a while, but it's so big that no one ever researches it and figures out how to do it. And it seemed like if we wanted to look at energy generation, which is one of the things that the select board has talked about, that would be a project of research and then figuring out what's involved. Years ago, I went to a workshop with Becky, our town administrator. It seems like the biggest burden is upfront capital. If you had the capital, it'd be that, then you could do it. But as I like to think, we ended up building municipal fiber, and we had subsidies from the state, but we did it. And this is sort of on par with that. And we already have a municipal lighting plant that Graham was on the board of. So, we have things in place now that maybe we didn't before. So that's sort of like one of the big things. The other thing, I think for me, it gets sort of to, what Gail was saying about convening the other committees, that we might want to lift up a couple of these things, so, whatever is manageable, or we can figure out, each of us, if we has a passion, like we could sort of become the point person reporting back on things. But I do like the idea of sort of trying to figure out, based on the charges of other committees, how we can engage them. So like open space, we can look at open space. Transportation, I ended up doing, it's called I want to say it's Smart Streets, so I think that's Complete Streets,
Complete
which is a whole
streets.
which is a whole program from the state about moving, creating more pedestrian bicycle friendly transportation. So if you think about all the, like the traffic islands that you see, like on Pine Street, if you're turning into Amherst, those are all traffic calming, all that stuff is Complete Streets. And a lot of people think you can't do that in rural communities, but you can. Like, we could make walkability on Leverett Road. Or an idea that I had pitched at one point was, if we get to build the library and it's on lot 032, which is across from the highway department, we could build a path from the elementary school to the library, create walkability. So, figuring out if there's things in this huge list that we can sort of raise for other people to think about, then they're doing the work, and we can either be a resource or we can ask them to report back to us. But for me, it's a matter of helping educate, helping sort of spark people to think about stuff, other committees to think about it, and then hold the parts, because at this point, no one knows what anyone else is doing. So if we can sort of connect the partners or say, oh, you want to do X, we'll make sure to talk to this committee and check in with FinCom and that kind of stuff. Because then we can actually move things forward. And we won't be, and because there's no way that 7 of us can actually, move even a portion of this stuff. It's all pretty deep and complex. So in terms of, I don't think we have to solve it tonight. Zoe, you didn't say anything about your priorities. Is there anything that you wanted to say?
Yeah, I guess I feel inspired about educating the community and skill building. And I think to the things that I have experience with, that I feel that I have personally felt really empowered by building skills around growing food and composting and just a lot of kind of home scale lifestyle things that I feel like we could gift to the community. And I don't know what that would look like, or which committee I would coordinate with to like help get those skills to those people. But I would be excited about heading up something like that.
That's cool.
Excellent.
Yeah.
The name that jumps out for that is Marianne, our librarian.
Cool.
She's one for pushing out educational opportunities and things like that. But I think that's a great example. There you are, Gail.
But that would be a wonderful focus for this committee. I mean, part of it is to educate our town and the people who live in it on energy needs and efficiency. So that an outreach could be a part of this committee program.
I agree. So taking sort of Miriam's point about being concrete, is there, like I was saying, I don't think we have to solve it tonight, but is there things that jump out that we should sort of think more about now, or set ourselves up for a discussion for next time as we start either narrowing down focus areas or activities, like, the convening, the education, looking for funding. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we sort of identified. Miriam? And then Nate.
I like Gail's idea of also looking for where funding is available. I think that may help focus us and, help us to be, put our energy where we can be most effective.
Okay.
In both funding and maybe other models, for for if we're looking at community solar, I'm not thinking there's going to be a grant for that, but there may be other models of other communities doing this. So researching how other communities are doing this might be, especially small towns, might be really worthwhile.
Cool. Okay. And Nate, and then Graham.
Yeah, I was just gonna volunteer to like prepare a brief on municipal aggregation of electricity. I was wondering if it's something that smaller towns might do. And then I saw that Pelham is getting ready to do this. So I'd be happy to just prepare a few slides and describe it. And I was also wondering if meeting once a month is going to be enough, depending upon how much we bite off. But yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. There is an awful lot here that we could do, and then maybe this is something for, as we approach the closing of the meeting, but how we can effectively sort of move things forward, just given the structure of open meeting rules, and how do you maintain momentum? It'd be great to hear from people who've been on boards and committees before, just to get a feel for the cadence of this style of work.
Yeah, it's a great question.
Excellent.
Cool. Yeah, Graham.
Yeah, just to one detail with doing solar projects for a municipality is that the federal tax credit of 26%, municipalities don't pay federal tax, so there has to be a transitional structure for a few years, or somehow or other membership within. They haven't worked out the details. That's going to probably solve itself in the next few years. But right now there is that little bump, 26% tax credit that a town doesn't know how to take. So it'll be fixed in the next few years, I'm sure.
Cool. Leslie.
I would be happy to follow up with Marianne O'Connor about the community solar and report back to the committee. And I agree with Nate, we've got a pretty ambitious agenda, and I'd be open to meeting twice a month. I know
Yes.
you and Miriam and Gail, you're on other committees. This is my first committee, so I've got so many things going on, especially with clients and gardening season, et cetera. So I'm not looking for more meetings, but I wonder, I'm happy to follow up with Marianne. I also like Zoe's thought about helping people with composting. I see also on the list solid waste. So perhaps maybe me, Zoe, or anyone else, we put together a program for the library on waste. It's a very big topic for chefs and foods and restaurants, looking at all the extra waste. I know for me, I hardly even put out any garbage these days. After a couple of months, I'm like, well, maybe I will throw the bag out, So I think that there's, as I look around the road, just how much garbage people are creating. And that also adds expense to the town for removing it, when they could be composting and also using less products that create more waste.
Yeah.
2 points. I would cheer Nate in his encouragement to our meeting more often to keep the momentum going. A month seems like a long time between meetings. The second point, Leslie, go talk to the recycling committee, because they have made some, I don't know, motions is maybe too big a thought, but talked about how to use the food that's wasted at the school, for instance, and turning that into compost or handing it on to others who could use it as food. But there are all those kinds of issues that have come up in other places, particularly at the recycling committee.
So I have two thoughts. One is, given in terms of the meeting, we can do whatever we want, but if we want to, how about we could meet in 2 weeks, which is the 12th, and then 2 weeks after that, which is the 26th. And at least we'll gather momentum and we can figure out if we want to meet every 2 weeks after that, or we'll just sort of, we'll do Tuesdays and we can just sort of jump around. And I think the momentum's, until we figure out how we're going to work, I mean, we're creating our own culture and our own set of priorities. So I think it's a good point, Nate. The other thing I just sort of, what strikes me listening to everyone is one of the additional things that we should be doing is educating ourselves. So like the fact, Nate, that, you offered to do the research on the aggregate community aggregation, and Leslie, you were going to do community solar, is that just helps us as a committee, and so we can learn, and then we can also figure out is, do we want to go down this path? So if we add that to sort of our own assignment, it seems like that's part of what will benefit our work, if that makes sense to everybody. Miriam and then Graham.
Just to answer Nate's question about it, like, how do you manage open meeting requirements? It really is helpful to like delegate and have people work on individual things in between meetings and then report back to the committee at the open meeting, because it's really hard. We can talk conceptually and we can make decisions as a group, but we can't be sort of bouncing ideas off of each other in the interim time, either by email or other ways. So if somebody wants to take something on and like we're talking about and then report back, I think that's a good approach.
Yeah, if I can just, Graham, I'm just going to jump in for a sec. So as you point out, and Zoe, I'm not sure how much you know about open meeting law, but it's sort of, open meeting law, the idea behind it is transparency for the public, so that, since we're a public body, we're doing the work that people would know what we're doing. So that's why there's minutes. And the idea is, I mean, this is not a high stakes committee, but, if you're on the finance committee, the select board or something like that, people say, they shouldn't have side conversations out of the public view. That's the idea behind open meeting law. But it does take the whole normal way that people now work, which is collaborative online sharing stuff, and throws it out the window. And I think that's sort of the challenging part. I would agree with Miriam that most committees, usually there's delegation, so, using Nate, your example, that we would say, sure, Nate, go off and, find out about community aggregation and get back to us. The one thing that I learned somewhere in the last year, and Miriam, you might have been part of this, but there's there's a concept of sort of having a work group. And so on the face of it, you say, oh, a work group is not a committee, so you can sort of a subgroup of people can do it. What I learned from talking to our town clerk and doing research is that if you designate people as a work group, then they become their own public body. And so it's helpful to have an individual. And so it doesn't mean that you can't have substantive conversations. So the concept of a quorum, so there's 7 of us, so a quorum is 4 people. So really 3 of us could have very detailed conversations because we can't make a decision with 3 people. You can only make a decision with 4. So, just to play this out as an example, Nate, if you were working on the aggregation stuff and you said, I've done this research, but I should check in with someone because I have a question, or I've written something. What do you think? You could send it to Graham. Graham could look at it and give you feedback. And that's legit because the committee tagged you as the responsible person. So you yourself are not a quorum, but for you to reach out to someone, still staying under that sub quorum to sort of get some engagement. So I know on the planning board, I do that. So if I write a policy for the planning board, I'll often send it to one person who's pretty knowledgeable to sort of say, this is what I wrote. What do you think? There's only 2 of us. So we're way below a quorum, but we get a product that we can deliver. And like I do the delivery and sort of acknowledge that I checked in with somebody. So that's sort of the way to, it stays kosher, but nonetheless is productive, if that makes sense. Graham.
And the way we've often done it on broadband is if someone is designated with a task or a role to do something, then they provide it as an informational draft thing before the meeting, because it's easier to and so it comes back to everyone as a draft, and informational, and it's not discussed until the meeting. And that way, they've done something, they've done something that has been announced at a public meeting that they're going to do it. And then when they do it, they can share it. And that's not that doesn't seem to subvert the open meeting law, as long as we don't discuss the draft before the meeting. So.
Yeah, great point, Graham. Yeah, it makes it productive so we can read it.
Yeah,
ahead of
yeah.
time.
So, and it makes the meeting more productive. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to stop sharing this thing. I realize it's been up there for a long time. So I would say, just in terms of next steps, it seems like we nailed three things in particular before we move on to the next topic. One is, if it's okay with everybody, we'll meet on April 12th. So we'll have a next meeting, and then we'll plan on the 26th. So we have 2 meetings scheduled. That Nate will get tagged if the committee is okay with it, to do some research on community aggregation. Leslie, you were going to do the community solar and sort of just report back. And then I can see, Gail, you have a question or a point.
I'd be willing to go chalk out funding sources, grant sources,
Cool.
and tie them to specific focus.
That would be great. Cool.
Along those lines, may I add something?
Yeah.
There's probably a grant. I don't want to volunteer myself because I'm already got more than I can handle right now, but this might interest Zoe, or this might be something that Gail could look at. But I know there are monies for schools to have gardens. And they're probably, if the school is generating a lot of compost, there are probably farmers or gardeners that would love to have it. But there's probably a grant to start a school garden that the kids would grow and compost, and that food gets used in the school. I don't want to add that to my list, but Gail, if you want to check that out. Okay, perfect.
Thank you. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, before we move on, it makes me think that maybe one of our value adds and deliverables to the town is to have a list of funding opportunities, so that, related to the universe of what we're responsible for. So the school, if the school knew about it, the school could write for it,
Could
but they probably
right.
don't know about it. And there's lots of stuff like that. I'm sure there's highway related things, et cetera, et cetera. So that might be one of the things we could develop. Gail, would you like this? We can put it on our website. And so people, and promote it that way. So we're doing the research that people would never have the time to.
Right.
So that might be a really concrete benefit.
Mention something though. I think before we start going down the rabbit hole with the school, maybe we should check with the school to see what they do. Because they might be already doing something that we're not, we don't want to be duplicative.
Yeah.
Right, but how I took this from Leslie was, don't just focus on the particular things on our list, but look for funding sources for energy efficiency and environmental uses
Yeah.
that are out there.
Yep.
And if we leave it as an open-ended thing, we as a committee can take on some or not, but it's there as information for the community, for other folks to take up on. And
Yeah.
if the school's already picked up on it or not, fine.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. So if I can segue to the last two things, one is the MVP action grant, and then the green community status. And so, Nate, good point about the action grant. I can give you everybody an update about that. So it's underway, and anyone can help. But where it is now is Shutesbury got a planning grant, which a couple of years ago, which is what paid for that report that you all saw. And since we had a planning grant, we're now eligible for action grants. We actually get to do stuff. So the current grant got announced a few weeks ago. The deadline for submitting a proposal, I think, is the 3rd week of May. It's somewhere a little after town meeting. Rita, assuming that she's feeling better tomorrow morning, and Becky and I are going to be meeting. The select board probably 6 weeks ago decided that they would apply for an action grant, and the way it works in town is the select board's the body that usually applies for the grants, even if someone else writes it on their behalf. So there was a letter of intent. It was called a letter of expression of interest that had to be submitted to the MVP folks. So I worked with Becky and someone else whose name I'm forgetting, who I think lives at the lake. We developed, and then Becky submitted for the select board an expression of interest. And then Becky had a conversation with the regional MVP rep, this guy, Andrew Smith. And they had a conversation of which we took that whole long list that you guys saw and shrunk it down to some priority issues. So it included storm water, dirt roads, a couple other things. And what I was pitching was to create a theme, like an overall umbrella. So like stormwater is an umbrella, and then there's a lot of little things underneath it. So we could maximize paying a consultant and then having them do it. The feedback was they wanted us to narrow down more. So that's what tomorrow's conversation is, to figure out if we're going to be competitive, how do we narrow down? But that my counter argument is we don't want to narrow it down so much that we're not doing enough. What I got from talking to Becky last week was communities can keep applying for action grants year after year. I don't trust that the money will always be there, and we might as well start doing stuff now. So I think I'm going to work with Becky on writing the MVP action grant. But if anyone else wants to be participating, like Nate, if you wanted to be involved, either joining the meeting tomorrow or just getting looped in, I think open door for anybody who's interested. So, and if not, we'll just keep plowing along. Mira?
I just thought I'd share something because, sometimes information gets siloed in different boards.
No.
And stormwater. Okay. So just so you know, because there's been a lot of discussion. So one of the problems with our
Your
town.
speaker's out.
What?
No, I can hear her.
Speaker's out.
My speaker's out?
No, I can hear you.
One of the problems with our town is that our town does road repairs in wetlands without permits. And so the town is technically in non-compliance with state law and the local bylaw. And we have been asking the town to apply for a permit to the Concom so that we can recommend best practices around stormwater management. And we have been hitting up against a colossally thick, hard rock wall.
An impervious surface.
An impervious surface. Don't put that in the minutes. Anyway, recently it kind of came to a higher level of scrutiny because there was a complaint filed with DEP by a town resident complaining about damage to wetlands by the road department.
Oh, boy.
And so we have politely asked the town to develop a permit application to us in all due haste. And we have asked the select board to take some leadership on this because it hasn't been happening. And I would say nothing has happened. And so the Conservation Commission has had conversations about, well, what do we do when the town is in a violation of a law that we are tasked with enforcing?
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things with the MVP is you can do stuff and you can also work on policies, which also coincides with our committee.
So do it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know.
I just thought you should know because
Yeah.
really
I do know. I do know.
It's just really interesting how, you guys are talking about stormwater management, but then, it's kind of like we're having these conversations with the select board and with the highway department and with the town administrator. And it's like, okay. Could we just get these two things to work together?
Yeah, hopefully Rita can
Yeah.
be the glue on that one. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if anyone wants to join, but I can report out when we meet in 2 weeks about what happened. We will hopefully at that point have a priority list and just sort of be writing. But the idea, since we're supposed to be, tracking MVP is, let me just share one other thing with you guys, just because I created it for this MVP process. Let's see. That's not what I
Yes,
want.
yes. This is excellent.
Did I share it? There we go.
Yeah, and you took it away.
There it is.
No,
So- This is not, do you see the colors?
nope, gone. It was there
Really?
for a minute.
Oh, let me try again. Hold on. Share screen. There.
Yes,
Okay. So I organized this as a way of figuring out when we were writing the letter of intent, how do we group this stuff? So, I labeled it with high, moderate, and low, and then MVP has keywords,
Can
and
you
costs
blow
and
it
stuff.
up, Michael?
What?
Can you blow it up, make it a little larger?
I can. Hold on one sec.
you can
Thank
do
you.
that on your own screen.
I can
Well,
do
I'm
it.
on an iPad.
View
What?
options, zoom ratio. There you go.
Thank
That's
you.
good.
Everyone can see that okay?
Yeah,
Yes,
that's
thank
good.
you.
Thanks.
So
Oh, well, just added one more thing about the Concom, just so you know, we are in the process of doing a field inventory of culverts and bridges in Shutesbury.
Great.
Excellent.
yeah,
We need more.
yeah.
We were out
So-
on Saturday morning as a team mapping.
Yeah.
Great.
Oh, wow.
So I share this only because it was something that we got created to figure out, like, how do you group that whole big report?
Yep.
My sense is we're not going to do a lot of this because MVP is going to say do less, do less, do less. But I'll send this out to you just because it might be helpful to take that report and sort of narrow it down into,
Right.
a one pager so you can sort of see what the categories are. And I didn't attempt to do that with hazard mitigation because I didn't have to, and that was way longer. So is that helpful, Nate, in particular? Is that? Okay, cool. So Gail, did you want to talk about green communities? And we're going to go over a little bit, I apologize, but we'll almost do the agenda.
Well, I started asking some questions, which led to other questions, which led to another trail this way and that way, and blah, blah, blah. Ended up with the regional coordinator of green communities. And Shutesbury was certified as a green community in 2011. And the question was, are we still a green community? And if so, what do we have to do to stay a green community? Turns out, yes, we are a green community, but, and to her credit, the town administrator has been turning in annual reports so that I think that's what keeps us alive as a green community. But unless the questions are answered from the report by April 22nd at 5 p.m., we are not eligible for funding for the grants that are coming up this fall. So yes, there are green community funding grant funds out there. Are we eligible? Well, at the moment, no, but we could be if the answers are satisfactorily, the questions are satisfactorily answered by the town administrator by April 22nd.
What does that require? Like, what kind of reporting is needed, Gail?
I do not know. And he would not answer me. He said you would have to make a request from the select board of the town administrator. So,
Wow.
Well, it seems like this could be our first recommendation to the select board.
Do it now. Yeah, I agree.
because, well, the question's coming, could we potentially have an application or something in mind to apply for by this September? Yeah, why not?
Sure.
Certainly not to wait another year for a funding cycle. So it seems to me imperative that we get our britches pulled up properly and ready to go.
Graham, you're going to chime in?
Yeah, if we could see what last year's or the last time Becky did the April report, I'll bet they're pretty simple. I mean, I'll bet they're pretty redundant in a lot of things don't change every year. So
Right.
so it might be a very easy thing if Becky was all.
Would you take that on? Because
I'll contact Becky
Thank you.
tomorrow. Okay. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Yeah. Am
Yeah,
I
and-
authorized by the committee? Is that good?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I'll go for it.
Yeah, and I was gonna follow up on that just because I think it's not a bad precedent to establish, but if we're good with it, I would say, how about the ECAC is what Amherst calls this committee. So I've just been calling this ECAC, but if we recommend to the select board that they maintain our status because we're interested in applying for a grant come the fall.
I move that Michael send a letter to the select board recommending that we complete the report, the town complete the report, so that we be eligible for grants.
Zeph and I.
Okay, so Graham, who seconded? Just for officialdom, who wants a
Sure.
second? Okay, Leslie seconded. So Zoe, that's the thing you should capture, was Miriam made this motion and Leslie seconded, and then I'll call the roll call. And so basically when we do minutes, Zoe, it's just like you have to just say the person and then aye or nay. So Miriam,
Aye.
Leslie,
Aye.
Gail,
I,
Zoe, Graham,
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
and I'm an aye. Okay, so it was unanimous. So in the minutes, because we're online, you can't say unanimous. You have to do a roll call, which is saying what everyone did. But I'd be happy to do that. I mean, I think it'll be a short little email thing as opposed to a formal letter. Gail?
I suggested by a phone message to Becky that she might consider having this committee take the task of filing that report every year.
Yeah.
Now, part of the material that goes into that is what she has already asked, I believe, Joan Hanson to file for, oh, this gets so complicated. Mass Energy Insight purports to be a data collection. But what they collect is what we put in for deliverables. They get automatic reporting from National Grid.
This is
Eversource,
about
blah, blah, blah.
this is energy generation information.
Energy, no, Mass Energy Insight.
Yeah, but it's the stuff that we're generating that they
Yes.
report on.
Yes. So, but they do not get the data from deliverables. So the gas, the oil, blah, blah, blah. So Becky has arranged for someone to go through the warrants, would you believe, and pull out the gallons per whatever and report that to Mass Energy Insight.
For the town.
And there's a website then where this is all portrayed graphically in bar graphs and pretty colors and all that good stuff. So the data is out there, but it's data that the town has put up in the deliverables. But I would bet that much of that information is what goes into those reports to green communities, because they're interested in reducing use of oil, gas, electricity.
Right. It sounded like, Gail, that if the select board was good with us doing the annual report, that you might be willing to sort of gather the data and do that. Did I get that from previous emails or no?
Yes and no. I'm not in a position to hire somebody or to myself go through the warrants of
But
bills
this-
for oil and gas deliveries to the fire station, town hall, and
Right, but the submitting of it. So if Becky can make it happen, that we can, if we got the data delivered to our feet, we can submit it.
yes, then I'd be
Yeah.
happy to deliver from the website. Yeah.
Okay, because I think that's a subsequent thing. I mean, my sense is we have to, and the select board has to answer these questions, which at this point in time, since we're a nascent committee, really Becky should be doing as town administrator, but going forward, we can take that responsibility on.
I should think she'd be happy to hand that off. I mean, that's going to be
Yeah.
a tedious thing to do once a year. Graham, do
Yeah.
you know what the report entails?
No, I have no idea, but I'll bet it doesn't change. Yeah, the format will be similar every year. I assume a lot of things would be pretty similar.
Yeah. Nate?
Yeah, I was just going to say that, for the purposes of responding to this reporting requirement for green communities, we want to acquire important information, but I was just thinking as an area of work for the committee as a whole, having a set of data to base decisions upon and guide our thinking is just so important. So I just wanted to just flag that as a potential just area of work for us, because that can create feedback loops in behavior as we sort of see what we're doing, and then we can respond to that and then see how we're getting better over time. It's just an important part of our benchmarking and steering behavior. But just like doubling back very briefly for Zoe's benefit, and then for mine when it's my turn to take minutes, the recording of this meeting, how do we go about accessing that recording? If we are wanting to just go back and maybe double check some passage of the meeting for completing our notes, or just for our own reference if we were spacing off at a particular moment and we wanted to go back and see what the committee was talking about. Or if
Great
we missed
question.
it.
Yeah, so it's really easy, though I know you're not really ever going to space out because they're so interesting. But if you send an email to Grace, who's our town clerk, and it's townclerk@shutesbury.org, and she can send you the link to the meeting. And then you can there's a link and a password. And then you can just get it and either just watch it or download it. That's what I've done in the past. And we're using Grace's account. I think the town has 2 or 3 Zoom accounts. So great question. And I would say, just because I have a sense that informally, Nate and Gail, if you guys want to be our data geeks, you might be the lead, because Gail, you had talked about that, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, and like I said, getting back to open meeting rules, you guys can talk to each other about like how maybe we want to do data and come forth with a plan, whether it's next week or a month from now or whatever. But I think that would be really helpful. And I think, Nate, your point is well taken. So.
Can I make sure I understand the motion that happened?
Sure. Given the pressure of taking minutes.
Just trying to make sure I do it right. Okay, so there was a motion that Michael made that, or no, Miriam made a motion that Michael send a letter to Becky,
To the select board.
to the select board, and to push the select board to send a report
No,
to green communities,
ensure,
To answer the questions.
Yeah.
to answer the questions that are required for the report.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Or to maintain our status, I think, as a green community.
I think,
Yeah.
I think I meant to make sure that the report is submitted so that we maintain our green community status. That was what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That they should take some
Yeah.
initiative.
The report was it was submitted in November in a timely fashion. But
Oh,
they have
wow.
come back with questions about the report that they want answers to.
Oh.
And those answers have to be returned before April 22nd at 5 p.m. Satisfactorily answered. I don't know what that means. For us, for the town to be eligible to apply for any of the grants in the fall.
Uh-oh, okay. Well, that's not,
Okay, that's different. Graham, you still want to take
Yeah,
that up?
that's a little different, but that's okay. That means it's mostly done. Done in November, you said.
The report was done, yes.
Mostly done in November. Okay.
The imperative
Well,
is to have,
that's reason for optimism, because it means Becky actually was 3/4 of the way there. Oh.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of,
we hope so.
yeah.
That's what that
so it's a matter of her having a satisfactory answer to the questions which they.
Yeah. No, I got satisfactory. Yes, it's.
So now
See.
that makes sense, Gail. So you wanted to know what the questions were and they wouldn't tell you.
Correct.
Ah,
Oh, that's.
And I asked about past reports, like has she filed a report for every year since 2013? Requests would have to come from the town administrator or the select board. Okay,
Well, maybe.
fair enough. I have to respect that. I mean, he doesn't know me from Adam. I sign on as a would-be committee member, and he's glad we've got a new committee.
Do
And
we
he's
want
been-
to ask for copies of those reports so that we can understand them better?
Yeah, Becky has them,
Yes.
Okay, so,
and the administrative secretary does not.
okay, so we want to send we want another motion that Michael asked, what?
It's okay. I'll just do it.
We don't want to push so hard that we get back.
you're right. If you ask
Yeah.
for two things, you might get none.
Oh, okay.
I think, why don't we wait on the request for the reports and,
Okay,
Gail and Nate can sort of, when they come back with their data,
okay.
idea, we can figure out, well, what are the data sources? So we got green community reports. I don't know what else, I don't know what else we have there. I know Gail was trying to crunch numbers about energy generated from the solar panels, but maybe that might just be a task of figuring out if we're going to do benchmarks, which are in our charge, what data do we have to inform some of those
Right.
benchmarks?
How do we establish the benchmarks? Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a great question. It's part of our work. So I'll be bold and say, maybe we should adjourn and we'll see each other in 2 weeks. Does that work?
Second adjourn.
Okay, so I'll so you just have to do it formally. So who wants to move to adjourn?
I moved to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, so I'll just roll call us out. So Leslie,
I'm out.
no, just,
I'll second.
Yes,
it.
yes or no?
Oh, to adjourn. Well, I actually had one more thing that I was hoping
Sure.
Gail might research. And that was, I don't know how many months ago when the PSAs were noted by the fire department and people's residencies, I emailed Becky and said, hey, how about mushroom remediation? Never even got an acknowledgement that she received the email. And I just spent a couple weekends ago, and a mushroom summit. And I realized there's probably grants because there's a lot of energy around mushrooms. So I wanted to ask Gail if she'd be willing to pursue like any grants related to mushroom remediation to clean up pollution.
Mushroom remediation?
Because
Okay,
they absorb toxins.
Just as an FYI, just so you know, Leslie, when they had the oil spill, remember the oil leak, the environmental company that was doing the cleanup used bioremediation.
Okay, that's great.
cool.
Um,
So this is just an educational thing for, I think, mostly Nate and Zoe. So in terms of committee process, the way this stuff works, because it seems arcane, is when we want to decide something, the chair will say, can I get a motion? And someone will move, and then you have to have a second. And then the chair says, any discussion. So like what we just did now is actually cool, because it's sort of like we had a motion, we had a second. Leslie's comment, although it was not necessarily germane, was part of the discussion. So it wasn't like it was in left field. And then we can still proceed. Once the discussion is finished and everyone said their piece, then we can have a vote. So that's usually that's usually the dance that happens. So any other discussion before we adjourn? So Leslie, do you want to say aye or nay for adjourning?
I adjourn.
Okay, Gail,
Shaker, aye.
Miriam,
Hi.
Zoe,
I.
Graham,
Aye.
Nate, and I'm an aye. Well, it's been a total pleasure. So we're
Been
adjourning.
fabulous.
And
Yeah,
thank you all.
Yay.
See you in 2 weeks.
Oh,
And-
we're good.
This was
Who
great.
do I send the minutes to?
You should
And
send it to, you should send it to everybody. And then we get to look at it. And then we can, what we'll do next time is we'll have it on the agenda for approving the minutes. If someone sees stuff that's like small grammatical stuff, just forward it to Zoe so she has it. But if there's a substantive thing that we should, discuss, like if, just say, your minutes say, we want a chemical remediation as opposed to a mushroom remediation, it would be Leslie's chance to say, you got it wrong. So that kind of thing we would discuss in the minutes, but like, as often happens at planning board minutes, they spell my last name wrong just because half the time they do. So I have, that's not worth
I won't do
discussing.
that to you, Michael.
So, but yeah, if you send it out just, a couple of days ahead of time, and then we can all review it and discuss it. That'd be great.
Okay,
And
yeah.
send it-
and was there an example?
Yeah,
that-
Miriam was going to send it to you. I'll remind her, and then actually before we adjourn, so Leslie, you should tell me, what email you want to get forwarded. So if we want you just your personal one, I'll add it to the ECAC email. And then Gail, same thing for you, because when you send it out, so if you just send it to the ECAC@shutesbury.org, it'll get distributed to everybody. So
We need a password to open that?
no, it's a forwarding. So I have it set up.
Oh,
I have-
excellent.
Yeah. So,
Cool.
yeah. So
Great.
let me know separately, Leslie and Gail, and I'll add you to the list and we'll do our little forwarding dance. So
What do you need to hear from me?
do you want me to just send it to your regular Gmail account?
Yeah,
Or do you,
please.
okay, I'll do that. And Leslie, do you have a preference?
At this point, just keep sending it to me. At some point, I'll go on Gmail and make an account, but it's actually been super easy to just go through one email rather than.
Okay.
Yeah.
two different.
Will do. I'll set that up then. Great.
Thank
Well,
you.
have
Thank
a great.
Same
rest of
time,
the
same
night.
place, 2 weeks?
Yep, I'll send it
Okay.
out, 7:00. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
This is
Thank you.
Good
fabulous.
night.
Thank you.
Good night.